Atiku Abubakar denies hiring U.S. lobby group in an alleged effort to quash Buhari inauguration. Federal government approves death benefits for deceased workers in federal civil service. In international news, European Union leaders approve Brexit extension till October. And in sport, Lagos FA election for May 27.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has released a statement on Wednesday saying he did not spend $30,000 to hire any U.S. lobby group to allegedly persuade the U.S. Congress to quash President Buhari's inauguration. He says those stories were a total fabrication. He says the stories were planted by the Buhari camp. The PDP presidential candidate also says it has nothing to do with election campaign posters that have surfaced in Abuja. He says campaign season has come and gone and that he's challenging the results in court. He promised to continue with his court action, which he described as APC's biggest burden. He says there is nothing APC can do to stop him from continuing the court process, which he says is making APC nervous. President Muhammadu Buhari has attended the annual investment meeting in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, where he was wooing 6 groups of investors. Buhari told them to bring their investment to Nigeria and prosper. He told the investors they would have handsome returns on their investment in the shortest possible time. Buhari met with Sheikh Ahmed Al Maktoum, who is a private investor and is on the board of state-owned and private companies. He is also a member of the Dubai ruling family. Maktoum would like to establish a power plant in Lagos, and studies for that project have already been completed. The president also met with Dubai Investments, Limitless Group, Nakil Properties, Amir Power, and Lulu Group.
Today, we have digital banking, virtual currencies, and many social platforms that connect people and cultures. People work in it. People socialize in it, and people invest in it.
The Rivers State Police Command says it is not clear on what caused mayhem in Obio Akpo local government area of the state, where 12 persons were killed by unknown gunmen on Monday. Public Relations Officer Nnamdi Omoni had said the incident is being investigated. No arrest has been made. The command is appealing for public help in gathering information that could lead to the arrest of suspects in the incident. Omoni said the gunmen seized telephone sets from their victims, and those who hesitated or refused to hand over their phones were reportedly shot. Omoni said criminals will be punished no matter how long it takes to arrest them. Many families of deceased workers in the civil service can look forward to receiving death benefits owed to them by the federal government. Permanent Secretary with Service Welfare Office in the Office of the Head of Federal Civil Service, Didi Walson Jack, said in Abuja on Wednesday the government has approved 1.3 billion naira for death benefits for almost 500 deceased workers. She said the figure was part of the 563 next of kin beneficiaries screened for payment across 116 MDAs in January. Walson Jack said the Service Welfare Office confirmed the veracity of claim requests submitted by MDAs. 497 next of kins of deceased officers were cleared for payment, which she said would begin before the end of this month. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator in Abuja, Edward Cullen, wants the federal government to protect up to 10,000 women, men and children who were forced to relocate to Maiduguri, Borno State capital, from Jakana town 40 kilometers away. He said the Nigerian military had ordered the immediate departure of and relocation of the Jakana residents in the middle of the night. He said there was no prior warning. Cullen said the military transported the internal displaced persons by bus or truck to Bakassi camp for internally displaced persons. The military says the civilians were relocated for security reasons ahead of planned operations in the area. The UN Humanitarian Coordinator is urging the government to urgently provide safety, shelter, food, water, and medical care to the displaced civilians. He also would like to know when the IDPs would be allowed to return to their homes. A Togolese cook in Lagos has been sent to prison custody by a Lagos magistrate court on Wednesday for allegedly killing his boss, Chief Okpeyemi Bademosi, chairman of Credit Switch Technology. The charge against Sunday Anani, a Togolese national, alleges that the 22-year-old murdered Bademosi by stabbing him with a knife in October last year at his Ikoyi residence. The accused pleaded not guilty, and the case was adjourned till May. Coming up, African stories. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir resigns amid pressure from citizens and threat from military. And later, international news. EU leaders grant 6 months Brexit extension. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
This is in the news and African stories. The Sudanese military has pushed out and arrested long-reigning President Omar al-Bashir after 30 years in power. There have been months of relentless demonstrations demanding an end to his rule. The military says it will stay in power for a 2-year transitional period and then elections will take place. In an address on state television, Defense Minister Awad Mohammed announced a 3-month state of emergency, a nationwide ceasefire, and the suspension of the constitution. He also said Sudan's airspace would be closed for 24 hours. They have also shut border crossing until further notice. The group coordinating the protest against Bashir has rejected the defense minister's statement. It says only a civilian government composed of opposition figures would be acceptable. Bashir has been a fugitive for many years after being indicted by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. There is an arrest warrant for him over allegations of genocide in Sudan's Darfur region during an insurgency that began in 2003. An estimated 300,000 persons died in that uprising. The United Nations says lots of aid is getting through to displaced families in Mozambique who Cyclone Idai had sent running when it ravaged the country. The cyclone left hundreds dead and thousands injured and displaced. Reporter Robert Nagile is there.
At a makeshift camp in Beira for displaced persons in the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, a group of women queue, waiting to receive donated clothing for their families.
I did not take any belongings when the cyclone hit Buzi. We lost everything, including our house.
The camp is one of several set up in Beira after Cyclone Idai made landfall on March 15th, claiming at least 600 lives. Situated at a technical college, it hosts close to 2,000 people, mostly from the town of Buzi, 200 kilometers away. They're among the lucky ones. Here at least, they're provided with food, shelter and much-needed medical help.
We have treated a lot of respiratory infections and diarrhea. In total, 1,343 patients have been treated.
According to the latest figures from the United Nations, close to 800,000 people received food assistance, while a further 10,000 are getting daily ready-to-eat meals. About 240,000 homes have been destroyed or damaged. Previously only accessible by air, the road to Buzi has now been repaired and more people are receiving much-needed help.
It's still quite critical there, but a number of aid agencies now have a forward operating base in Buzi, which allows them to address the needs in Buzi, but also the communities around Buzi.
Back at the camp, Jaun Dinda, a father of 6, has a reason to smile. Separated from his wife and 6 children when Buzi was engulfed by floods, he was among the hundreds airlifted by helicopters to safety in Beira.
I have been told they survived. They are all alive.
And despite the uncertainty the future holds, most people here are just thankful to be alive. It is still not known how long these people will be housed in these camps. Most, if not all, have lost everything and have nothing to go back to. Rebuilding their lives will be a struggle and may take years.
Egypt has pulled out of the U.S. efforts to forge an Arab NATO with key Arab allies in a blow to the Donald Trump administration's strategy to contain Iranian power. 4 sources say Egypt conveyed its decision to the United States and other participants in the proposed Middle East Security Alliance ahead of a serious meeting held in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Egypt withdrew because it doubted the seriousness of the initiative and feared the plan could increase tensions with Iran. South Africa is preparing for general elections in just under a month to elect a new National Assembly and provincial legislators in each province. There will be the 6th election held since the end of the apartheid in 1994 and will determine who will become the country's next president. Economist Watchful and reporter Angela Coppola tells us why.
Economists, observers and ratings agencies understand the structural constraints facing the South African government. They are looking for moves to deal with these issues, which will lead to real economic growth.
We would want to see a much faster pace of economic growth, so economic growth at much higher levels, economic growth which is much higher than population growth, which provides positive per capita, and that also trickles down to perhaps fiscal consolidation as the government is able to collect more tax revenues with better economic growth. Also, conversely, we also see that there could be further downside risks if the economy continues to underperform and posing pressure on public finances.
While the effect of Ramaphosa's administration is being analysed, the national elections are on the horizon, and the lack of data and expertise in polling and forecasting is muddying the waters. Forecasts put the ANC at the high end of 50%, the DA at the low to mid-range of 20%, and the EFF at 11%. The incumbents are concerned because there are several new parties vying for votes.
And there's a lot of tension in parties. They are tearing themselves apart because their constituencies are moving away from each other. And particularly the ANC is trying to hold on to a constituency that has increasingly diverse or even opposing views, whether those are class or cultural views. And we need new parties. We need a renovation because ultimately our politics works when the parties represent the real divisions and interests of the people.
While the election outcomes will only be known in May, economists are watching business confidence indices to see what the business community is happy or anxious about pre- and post-elections.
And it can be very much driven by political events, but for it to be sustainable at whatever level, it depends on, at the end of the day, what happens to demand in the economy. So if we don't have demand picking up, even if you have a, quote, good outcome in the election, business is happy with that, you may have a temporary bounce in business confidence, but if that is not, if you don't have a demand improvement with that, we don't think that confidence improvement will be sustained.
Everyone's waiting with bated breath to see what those election outcomes are going to be. But the bottom line is, if there isn't economic growth, those voters are going to turn away from the winning party come 2022.
When we return, international news. Britain must get its act together in 6 months to exit the European Union. And later, sports. Lagos FA election scheduled for May.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In international stories, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears more likely than ever to be headed to a fifth term after the party of his top rival conceded defeat in the country's parliamentary elections. With more than 99% of votes counted, Netanyahu's Likud party was set to lead a right-wing bloc with 65 of the 120 seats in parliament. His main challenger, Benny Gantz, accepted the result on Wednesday, acknowledging that he had failed to unseat the prime minister. A number of right-wing parties expressed their support for Netanyahu and are on course to give him a parliamentary majority. Indians have voted in the first phase of a general election that has been seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Tens of millions of Indians across 20 states and union territories voted in 91 constituencies. The seven-phase votes to elect a new lower house of parliament will continue until middle of May, to be followed by a counting a week later. With 900 million eligible voters across the country, this is the largest election ever seen. Prior to the elections, parties and candidates bombarded Indian voters with political content on social media. And reporter Ravinder Bauer tells us more.
Millions of social media users in India are being flooded with political content these days. It's election season and political parties are using all the tools they can to woo the voter.
I look at the social media content from my perspective. I ask myself how I am benefiting from this message.
Sometimes we get fake messages that you should vote for a particular party because it will be beneficial for you. But such messages have a negative impact.
When we swipe on Facebook, we're flooded with political content from various political parties. I would say social media is full of election content.
Election Commission of India has announced that the digital platforms have to adhere to the Model Code of Conduct.
One, the content itself, it shouldn't follow all the rules and regulations and the laws and the Model Code of Conduct. It should not be incendiary. It should not lead to hate speech and communal caste appeal and all that. Second is the expenditure. Every penny spent on any media, including social media, has to be accounted for.
There is a cap on expenditure by individuals, but there is no cap on the expenditure by political parties. It is obvious that the present government is in a position to mobilize more funds, and that skews the election in their favor. It will be a challenge for Election Commission to monitor the expenditure of political parties, especially on digital platforms.
Social media companies have agreed to carry only pre-certified political ads and share the cost of these ads with the Commission. But the activists believe that this is not enough.
We understand that almost 70% of world's social media traffic is passing through three organizations, Google, Twitter, and Facebook. Then I think there should be some responsibility somewhere, particularly when it comes to things like elections.
With about 500 million Indians using the internet, these steps taken to ensure free and fair elections seem inadequate.
Leaders of the 27 countries remaining in the European Union and British Prime Minister Theresa May have agreed to extend Brexit until the end of October. At an emergency meeting in Brussels on Wednesday, EU leaders agreed to offer May a 6-month extension. The Prime Minister had asked to postpone Britain's departure until June the 30th. This gives the UK more time to find the best possible solution to its parliamentary impasse and the best way to exit the Union. Most EU leaders favoured a longer term until year-end or later, but French President Emmanuel Macron said it took responsibility for blocking a long delay and convincing other leaders to agree to a shorter period in order to preserve the functioning of the EU. Still to come, sport. Lagos FA election scheduled for May 27. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Let's talk sport. The Electoral Committee of the Lagos State Football Association has announced May the 27th as a new date for election into the association. The committee's chairman, Segun Babatunde, said the election was postponed because of a directive from the Nigeria Football Federation. Elections will also be conducted in the 5 football divisions across the state on May the 17th. Organizing committee for the Governor Akinwumi Ambode farewell football match has confirmed the high-profile game will take place next month. The airport match would see former World Footballer of the Year and President of Liberia, George Weah, play alongside notable world football legends, including Didi Drogba. And of course, that would surely be a match to watch. That is the end of news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.